Hello, hello, dirty girls. How are you tonight? It is Training Tuesday, and I'm happy to be here. I know we missed last week, and I am sorry about that, but I'm glad to be back. And I'm going to tell you, I'm a little, oh, hold on. Technology's freaking out on me today. It's Mercury retrograde. Started today, which is why my technology is kind of freaking out. So I am, as always, going to try to keep an eye on the comments. So if I'm looking down, just know because the comment feed is down here on my setup today. I've got a slightly different setup today. If you've been on my trainings before, you know that my backdrop is a little bit different. And that would be because I've reoriented my office and I have to finish cleaning it before you can see it. So anyway, let's talk tonight about how being smart and brilliant and savvy and excellent at what you do can also stop you from doing amazingly great things. And it's probably my favorite imposter profile, and partly because in my mind, it's the sneakiest one. It's the trickiest one. It's the one where we can justify better than any other profile all the reasons why we don't have imposter syndrome. And so just to, hey, Rosalind, it's good to see you. I'm glad you made it. And hi, Joyce, it's good to see you. I want to talk about this particular profile because it is the sneakiest. And it's the one where we hide from this idea of imposter syndrome. And if you've joined me before on Training Tuesday, you've heard me say before, it does not matter whether or not you believe in the concept of imposter syndrome. The underpinning of imposter syndrome is simply that anybody and everybody who walks into a work situation, especially as they're moving up leadership ranks, feels levels of lack of confidence, insecurity, fear that they're not going to do well, that they're going to be embarrassed, things like this. The difference is with men, as they move up in the ranks and achieve measures of success, it goes away and they start to feel more confident and they believe in themselves. The study that came out back in the 70s that put in the term imposter syndrome was identifying the fact that with women who are high-performing women moving up through the ranks, it doesn't go away. Whereas men, their confidence builds and those insecurities naturally fall away. With women, it does not. It takes us a lot more effort and a lot more work to believe in our own strengths and our own power. And there's all kinds of reasons why, and it goes back to generations of and decades of training and all of that we've had. We've talked about those different topics. But because the last few trainings tonight and next week is about imposter syndrome and the different flavors, how it shows up, I always want to kind of clear that up right up front to say, you don't have to believe in imposter syndrome, you can or not. The fact is, we all walk into situations feeling a lack of confidence, if it's new, if it's foreign to us, feeling insecure that we might show up as unprepared, right? We're afraid of looking like dummies. The challenge for us is that it sticks. It sticks. And so what we want to talk about tonight is how do we get it to not stick? And how do we manage that? And what makes the natural genius profile especially tricky is because this is the one where we're convinced we don't have it anyway. And part of that is because as a natural genius, you don't feel like an imposter. And that's where the naming piece of it is. There's a little disconnect, I think, between what we call imposter syndrome and what the actual attributes are. Because if the natural genius profile is the one that fits you most comfortably, it's definitely mine, which is why I have such an affinity for this topic tonight. You don't feel like an imposter. That word doesn't sit well with you. But you do worry that you will be perceived as less than competent, less than smart. And it creates a series of reactions in us that basically joins the ranks of imposter syndrome. The basic ranks of imposter syndrome include things like people-pleasing behaviors, getting things right all the time, being available all the time, proving constantly that we're a good team player and that we're supportive and that we're available and we can solve problems, like all that stuff. With this one, there's a specific angle to it. You might still have all of those things. So there might be flavors of the superhero or flavors of the soloist that feel right. But as we go through this one, I think you'll know if this one fits you. So I'm going to share with you the experience that I had and where my kind of root, natural genius of the 5 profiles, this is the one I most resonate with. You guys heard me talk about, like, I do have some of those feelings of the superhero of wanting to be available all the time. That was definitely early in my career. Definitely had feelings of the soloist, wanting to work in a silo by myself because I should get this and I should be able to get this, by myself. I don't need help. This one is the one, though, that tripped me up for a long time, because this is the one, like I said, where we don't believe that it's a problem. So I'm going to start with saying hello. Welcome to those of you who have been here every week. Hello, and I see you in the chat. And I see that in addition to Joyce and Rosalind, Vicky said hi. Diana, Terry, hello, and Jackie. Ladies, thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate having you here. And I am going to ask you to continue to chat with me in the comments, because makes it a two-way conversation. If you haven't met me before, if we haven't worked together before, my name is Natalie Hahn. I am CEO of Dirty Girls Consulting. I am your host in this community. You are here at Training Tuesday, and I focus on working with women to build their confidence, build their leadership skills, to quiet the voice in your head that feeds you the limiting beliefs and the lies that you are not smart enough, you are not educated enough, you're not fast enough, you're not enough, right? That's the voice that we need to just hush. We need to quiet that down. And I'm happy to have you here. So let's talk about the natural genius and how this particular profile keeps us stuck in mediocrity, to call it out. It keeps us stuck in the level of good enough. So when I look back at my own profile in this and where it started, let's go all the way back to grade school. You're not going to get my life story. We don't have time for that. But let's go all the way back to grade school, because starting school, early grades, right? Early grades, right? Kindergarten and first grade are like pass, fail, excellent, good, whatever. And eventually you get to A's and B's and C's and all of that. And cakewalk right up to the 4th grade. Education for me was a cakewalk. School was easy. It was fun. I had positive reinforcement from teachers and my friends and my parents that I was smart. And then we switched schools. We moved. I was put in a new school that academically was way, way more challenging than the school I had been in. And I was now the class idiot. I was a dummy. And I worked so hard to make good grades. And when you're only 9, it's a shock to go one day from being the straight A kid, the next day to being a solid C. Like, it's a shock. You identified up to that point as being a smart kid, and suddenly you're like, I'm barely pulling average here. Barely. So I worked really hard to get myself back into the smart kid ranks. And for those of you, again, who've worked with me, I've talked about this achievement and grades. There was nothing more important in my family than making good grades. So it was important for me to conquer this. So I worked hard. I'd say by the time I spent 2 years in that school, got a solid education, definitely. And by the time I left, I was rocking A's and B's. Was not a straight A student, but I was getting A's and B's. Moved to a different school system, and now I was back to a much easier curriculum, and I was back to coasting. And I coasted all the way up till junior year of high school. Junior year of high school, grades were easy overall, except for math. Those of you who heard me talk about math before, you know that I will say math is not my strong suit. It's not that math isn't my strong suit. That is a limiting belief that I developed as a junior in high school. I had a math teacher who did not explain algebra 2 particularly well to me and was not interested in tutoring. And honestly, I tried talking to him after class a couple times and I could not understand anything he was saying. My parents hired an outside tutor to help me. And it was still a struggle, to be perfectly honest. It was still a struggle. Um, I developed this limiting belief then that I must not be good at math. It must be me, because I had friends who were doing fine in class. Now, I learned from them that they had tutors also that were helping them do well in math, and they understood the concepts better. I was still struggling. So I go through high school, my final 2 years, struggling very hard in math, and the limiting belief is formed that I'm no good at math. Even though right up until then, right up to the age of 16, I was fine with math. And in fact, in 7th and 8th grade, I was in advanced math classes. But now I was no good at math. So what happens when you have this limiting belief? I get to college, and what do? I pick math for dummies. As few math classes as possible, get out of them as fast as I can, do the bare minimum to pass, because I just need to pass, because I'm going to be an English major, because I have a natural talent for liberal arts. My entire life, then in school, I was told I'm a decent writer, I'm a good communicator, I'm creative. So I lean towards the liberal arts and I stay away from math. So my question is, did I do myself any favors? I didn't hate math. I felt like I didn't understand it. And the result was, when I got out of university and I'm looking at my career options, I'm avoiding any sort of career path or opportunity that has the word finance or that has the word operations, because I figured out that people who were involved in operations also needed to understand how to read spreadsheets. I avoided them. Do you think that was career limiting? Have you ever made a choice like that? Have you ever made a decision that when you look back, you realize that was based on a limiting belief, and that limiting belief, it created a direction for me, for sure. And I think back to, what skills or experience could I have today if I had allowed myself to pursue those opportunities that included operations? If I'd allowed myself to get out of the comfort zone of writing and communications and allowed myself to look at business operations and accounting, I might have been a lot smarter about starting my own business. Dirty Girls has been around for 10 years. I have been coaching and running my own business as a coach for 10 years. How much further and how much faster could I have gone if in my corporate career, which has been 30 years of marketing and sales, I had more operations experience? Now, I'm not saying it's a regret, because I love everything I've done and where I'm at, but I am saying, if I had not had that limited belief that pushed me to stay in my comfort zone of my natural talent, my natural genius for writing and communications, my opportunities might have been very different. So thank you, Terry, for sharing the math with me. Yes. And we have to remember, because we are smart. We are smart. It is a limiting belief that we self-fulfill that prophecy. So my question to you, and I'd love for you to share this in the chat if you're willing. My question to you is, what could you be doing? What would you be doing if the thought, this isn't my strong suit, or the thought, that's really not for me, wasn't holding you back? What would you be exploring? What role would you have? What would be different? And how far back in your life do you look to see, where did that come from? Where did that initial thought come from? I can go back to the 4th grade to say that's when I realized maybe I wasn't as smart as I thought. And I had to work really hard to prove to myself that I was smart and I could make this happen. But by the time I got to high school, that thought of maybe I'm not so smart was reinforced very specifically with it's math. It's math that you're the dummy in, Natalie. You can write all day long, but numbers, man, seem to confuse you, right? So Sue, your limiting belief, yeah, that's exactly what it does. Your limiting belief keeps you safe. And that is the challenge with the natural genius. Now, I want you to think about what are some things you've done that you've had to learn. We go all the way back to like we're babies and we learn to walk. Yeah, but we don't really remember that. We don't remember the falling down. So we're not afraid of that. Go back to what did you have to learn that was hard, that challenged you, and you did it. When's the last time you did that? When is the last time you learned a foreign language? And it was hard because they say our natural ability to learn a foreign language gets exponentially harder over the age of 13. For some reason, under 13, we absorb foreign languages like a sponge. But if it were over the age of 13, learning a second or a third language becomes exponentially harder. When's the last time you learned a second language or a third language? College physics was not a natural genius talent of mine. I had to work at it. What else have you done that falls in that category? What was it like the first time you presented to a room of 50 people or 100 people or to the executive team? What did that feel like? Maybe music wasn't your strong suit and you had years and years of practice before you played a melody that sounded beautiful to you, because we are our harshest critics. So I want you to think about that. Things like this that are not easy. We were not born with being gifted to do them effortlessly. We had to work at it until we gained the competence to do them at least reasonably well before we became genius at it. So Terry, you veered away. Yeah, you veered away from operations. We've run away from the statistical part of the job. I totally get it. For me in my career, even just sticking with the marketing career, right? There were things I was not maybe naturally gifted at. One of them, you'll hear me say this also, is details. Do not overload me with details. I don't love the details. I want to get from A to B. I don't want to get all the 0.5s in between. But because of my job, I had to get really good at project management. And if you've ever run an event, if you've planned a wedding or a birthday party or have done some sort of marketing event on a scale, you know, there's a lot of details. There's a lot of moving parts, and you have the added stress of they're all time contingent. They have to be done at a certain time in a certain order, and you're still left with the uncertainty of who's showing up, how are they going to respond, is this event going to be successful? I do not love event management, but I'm good at it. It was a skill I had to develop because it was the nature of my job to have to do it well. So sometimes in our natural genius, we forget there are things that we learned. They are things that we learned how to do. But as we get older and more comfortable, and as we're moving up in our career, trying those new things gets scarier. I learned event management earlier in my career. So as I move further in my career, the new things are scarier. Because why? I have the overriding thought of, I should know this already. I should already be good at this. Given all my experience, this should be easy, but they're not. So here's the deal with natural genius. And actually, let's look at the other profiles. If the perfectionist profile, having to have it all right all the time, is your profile, you judge your competence, right? Your level of competence is judged on having it right. Having it right. If the superhero, right, available all the time, come in and save the day, always on, always have a problem-solving hat on, then your judgment of competence is, am I available to problem solve? When you are a natural genius, your judgment of your competence is, how fast and how easy can I do the thing? It's based on speed, and it's based on, is it effortless? That's how we judge our success. So notice different flavors depending on your profile, right? Competence for the soloist is, can I do it alone? I need to do it alone. Competence for the natural genius is, how fast can I fix this? How fast can I make this happen? And make it seem easy. So I see some of you commented, so I want to pause there for a minute and take a look at this. So Diana, you spoke to a crowd of 10 and thought you were going to pass out. Once you realized it was all about them, how your message can help them grow. Exactly. So what I love about that is you turned that moment into not about you and your fear, but about them and serving them, right? And when the focus is not on you, it's so much easier, right? When we're not focused on, oh my God, is my hair out of place? Is there lipstick on my teeth? Am I stuttering? And instead are focused on them, it lets some of that pressure go. I love that example. Hey, Candace, hello from Atlanta. All right, Joyce, you might have a better outlook on things, more confidence in what you can do, more options for, yes, and that is exactly what we're talking about. How the natural genius, because we are good at things, because you are smart, but we stay in our zone. We stay where it's safe to be smart. It's safe because we know how to do this. And our interpretation is, if it's hard, I must be doing it wrong. If it's hard, I might not be smart enough because this is supposed to be easy. If it's hard, it's just not for me. We internalize that thought. And if we can't crank out a masterpiece the first time and right away, we struggle with a sense of failure. We struggle with shame that we're not smart enough or we didn't get it right and we should have known better. We beat ourselves up with this very high bar, maybe not as high as the perfectionists, but close. But we judge ourselves on the expectation that we should have been able to do it perfectly right the first time, fast. So how many of you out there does this sound like you? How many of you out there, raise a hand. You just drop a Y in the chat if you're willing to acknowledge that, yeah, this natural genius described this way now makes sense. Because we are smart, we believe we're smart, and things that don't make us look smart, we don't want to do, which is kind of a natural tendency, right? To not want to do it. I totally get that. I like the hands, Terry. Thank you. So, things to ask yourself if you're wondering if this profile fits you. Are you used to doing all the things all the time without a lot of effort? Like, are you used to things feeling easy? Do you have a track record of straight A's, of good performance marks, of gold stars? Were you told as a child that you were smart? Teachers, parents, were you the smart kid? Were you the smart sibling? Did your siblings tell you you were the smart one? Do you dislike the idea of having a mentor because you don't need one? You're smart enough to figure it out. You're smart enough to do this on your own. Do you avoid coaching? Do you avoid mentorship because you're smart enough? You got this. When faced with a setback, when faced with something not going your way, are you embarrassed? Do you feel shame? Does your confidence take a whack? Do you avoid the challenges that make you uncomfortable? Do you avoid doing things that already you have that preconceived notion, I'm not great at that, or I've never done it before, so I can't be great at that, so I'm not even going to bother? Signs that you might be a natural genius. Because here's what you did. You coasted through school. You landed a pretty good job. You coasted through your first few years of that, at least, because you had this ability to tap into what other people needed and wanted from you. And with your own natural genius, you leaned into your strengths. That's what we do with a natural genius. We're very good at leaning into our strengths, and we used those to help us. But as we advanced in our career and the things we needed to lean into maybe got harder or more foreign, we started to avoid them. When you think about the coping mechanism for the natural genius, right? Your options, what are our options when we're under stress, right? It's fight, flight, or freeze. Fight, flight, or freeze. If you are a Superhero, you fight. You fight. We're going to conquer this. We're going to solve this problem. We're going to push forward. It's okay. I'm here. I can do it. If you are a perfectionist or a soloist, you're more inclined to freeze. You're more inclined, oh, no, not doing that. No, too much at risk. Not going to do it. If you are a natural genius, our tendency is to flee out of the way. I am not staying in this space where I might be challenged. So let's say you've been recently promoted or you took a new job, and it's not a surprise because you killed it in your last job. You got great performance reviews. Of course, you move into this new leadership role. And then your first team meeting with your new team, they start throwing out acronyms that aren't familiar to you. And you're like, yeah, it's okay. I got this. I can figure this out. Pardon me. And then 2 meetings and 3 meetings in, you start realizing, this is a little more complicated than I thought. There's something missing. I'm not fitting all the pieces together as easily, and it becomes hard. And if you're in this situation over a period of time where you're still feeling like it's too slow, I'm not catching on fast enough, I'm not solving this fast enough, what do you start doing? You start looking for another position, maybe in the same company, maybe in a different company, but you start looking to remove yourself from needing to get into that grind, because the grind means I don't know, I didn't solve it quickly, and it's uncomfortable. And if you're a really smart boss, you hire somebody to fill that void for you. So you don't leave it all, but you create I was gonna say you create a gap, but actually you fill the gap of your knowledge with someone else who can play that role for you. While that's a very smart move, by the way, as a boss, you want to hire people smarter than you, and you want to hire people who fill the gaps where you might be strong. You want them to fill the gaps where you're less strong. But if it is a skill or an area where you know this is actually part of my job and I should be doing this, or you know, if I understood this, I could get further faster, you know, I should be conquering this, but I just hired that person and I let them do that part of the job. You know that, and you internalize and beat yourself up for it, even if you don't outwardly recognize that. Oh, Joyce, that is when you are labeled as a child as gifted and talented, and I've been in that school, that is not always a blessing. Okay, that can completely I think completely mess you up in the whole, am I smart enough or not? Because now you're supposed to be even smarter. I totally hear that. And Rosalind, I'm just reading your comment here. You got in front of the crowd, you got a little stuck, and I thought I could do it all with the flow. Should have written things down. Yeah. You know what? What's beautiful about that, Rosalind, is you recognize things you could have done to improve. And what you didn't end that with is, I'll never do another workshop again. You ended it instead with, there are things I could do to do better. So that's kind of a beautiful thing. So here's what we do. When you are a natural genius and the tendency is to flee, the tendency is to only apply for the roles where you know you're going to excel, to only go after the projects that you know you can handle and tackle, and there's minimal stretch, right? There's minimal stretch. We lay low. We are naturally containing ourselves in our comfort zone, which means we're never playing big. We're never pushing as hard, as far, or as fast as we could, because we are choosing to contain ourselves to where it feels safe. And whether you're doing this consciously or unconsciously, there is a part of your brain that knows, because there is a part of you, and that's why you're in this group. You are in this group. This group is called what? Accelerating Leadership for Professional Women. You are in this group because you know that you could have more impact. You know you are perfectly capable of doing more, being bigger, playing a bigger game. You know this about yourself. That's why you're here. When we have this little natural genius imposter voice going on, though, it says, you know what? You've done enough. You're safe here. People love you here. You're loved here. You're safe here. You play well here. Don't worry about those other things. Too risky, too hard, too uncomfortable. What if you fail? And so we don't. And so we don't step out and play bigger. And so we don't step out and play those risks. We avoid. And our typical avoidance strategy is to flee and then to create the boundaries that allow ourselves to stay safe. Here's the rub. As a natural genius, we know our superpower is being smart. And you are right. You are so smart. It is being smart, though, and protecting the smarts that we already have that keep us locked into mediocrity. If you don't push for the impact that you really want to have, if you don't move forward and challenge yourself to grow in different ways, you never get those bigger opportunities. When we stick with what we know, we stick with what's safe. We are in the world of tolerance and mediocrity. Tolerance and mediocrity says, I don't love my job, but it's a steady paycheck, so it's good enough. He is not the love of my life, but he's a good guy. So this relationship, it's good enough. The two relationships that we stay in well past their expiration dates are our romantic relationships and our jobs. Your job is a relationship. Those are the two. Because we rationalize staying put because it's the safe option. It is good enough. And when you're smart, you can rationalize that good enough is okay. It's okay. At least I can pay my bills. I may not be making the millions I'd really like to make, but at least I can afford my mortgage. I may not be having the romance of a lifetime that I always dreamed, but at least he does the laundry. We rationalize these things. So here are your counterpunches. For the natural genius, 5 counterpunches to push through that voice that's telling you, stay here, stay small. 1, and this one is number 1, honestly, for all 5. You're going to get this on all 5 of the imposter profiles. Number 1 is please, please, please talk. Talk to somebody, share this, share what you're feeling. Find it in yourself to be vulnerable about the fact that this is hard and it might be holding you back. The more that we talk about it and the more that we share, the more that we do what Brene Brown says, we shine the light on shame. And here's what happens. When you shine the light on shame, you start to realize that there are literally millions of women out there who feel the same thing. And now, really, how shameful is it if millions of us are experiencing the same thing? It's not. We just don't believe that. So whether it's a friend, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a coach, find someone and start sharing where you're at with that imposter voice. Trust me, you will find so much strength and so much power in building your own community and network around this. Counterpunch number 2. Give yourself a growth mantra. The growth mindset is what really makes us succeed, as no matter what your profile is, but especially in the natural genius profile. Having the growth mindset allows you to push past your natural abilities and start learning and building your competence and your confidence in other areas. Now, whether your growth mantra comes from the author Glennon Doyle, if you haven't read her book Untamed, I highly recommend it. But what does she say? She says, we can do hard things. It's a great line. We can do hard things. So adopt that as your mantra if that works for you. If it doesn't, pick something else, but something that reminds you, your growth is where your opportunity is. Your growth is where you play big. That's why you want to lean into that. Counterpunch number 3, focus on one thing at a time. Whether it's a big project you're tackling, whether it's a new language that you're tackling, whether it's a dance move, one thing at a time. If you step back and look at the whole thing you have to learn, it becomes overwhelming and it becomes hard, and then we don't do it. Give yourself the gift of breaking it down into smaller, digestible steps. Because once you build competence in step 1, you build your confidence and you can move on to step 2 and step 3. We don't build our confidence until we do the thing. So make the thing doable. So that's step 3 or counterpunch 3. Pick one skill to master, focus on that before you move on to the next skill. 4 is really important. They're all important, but 4 is really important. Separate discomfort from dislike. They're not the same. We often react to them the same way, but they are not the same. Discomfort is being uncomfortable, and it hits us when we don't know. We're not sure. We haven't done it before, so there's newness to it. Discomfort, though, when we're in discomfort, we can still see the other side to say, you know what, though, if I do get good at this, if I do master this skill, learn this language, take on this project, if I do this, I can see how this is going to benefit me going forward. I can see how this might be useful to me. Dislike, on the other hand, is when we are being rubbed the wrong way. And it's going against our values. It's going against the vision we have for our career, for our lives. And we do not see at the end of it that there's value to it. We don't see at the end of it what we're going to get anyway. So dislike is, I really don't like doing this thing, and I see no value. It's combined. Discomfort is, I've never done this before, and maybe I don't like it, but there's value in it. Like I talked about events management for me earlier. I don't like events management. I do not like the details and the weeds and the project planning and having to stay on top of everybody, but I can do it. And I learned that competency because I could see that for my career path, I needed to be good at it. I needed to get good at it. So separate discomfort from dislike. It was uncomfortable learning those skills and staying on top of it. And it's still uncomfortable for me sometimes to do it, but there's value. Dislike is, this rubs me the wrong way. This is against my values. It's against my vision. Not doing it. So Jackie, I know you're with me with that one on Jackie. So separate dislike and discomfort. Counterpunch number 5. If you don't do any other counterpunch, do this one. Do this one. Ask yourself multiple times. Ask yourself, is it really good enough? Is it really good enough? Is it really good enough? I want you to think of all the ways you're rationalizing why where you are right now, it's okay. It's fine. It's good enough. I pay my bills. I'm fed. My partner's happy. We have this one life. If that's what you envision in your life and you're happy, you're fine. But like I said, you're here in this group. You're here in this community because you have a bigger vision. Because you know inside yourself, you can do more, be more, have a bigger impact. So if you're settling for good enough, you're always going to have this friction inside you that's telling you, yeah, but what if? But what if you had? And then you have the imposter voice going, oh, but what if you fail? That's the voice we want to manage. What if you fail? What is the worst case scenario? So I want you to ask yourself, is it really good enough? And based on that question, you start making different choices because you are smart enough. You are super smart. That is why being smart is a problem for you. Is because we got also very comfortable being smart in a certain way, in a certain area that gives us the positive reinforcement that we've been getting our whole lives. And you're at a stage where maybe that positive reinforcement, maybe it's not enough for you to get where you really want to go. I want to urge you to not just embrace the fact that you're smart, to embrace intellect, of course you do. But I also want you to look at your entire journey being one of growth, being one of adaptation, and being one of perseverance. Because when we stick with it, with the growth, when we push through and we do the hard things, that is where we evolve our capacity to learn, to do more, to be more, to have that bigger impact. So that's Training Tuesday. Welcome to the Natural Genius. Can you tell? I know I went long. I'm really passionate about this one. One, because I feel it so much in my heart, and I've been through this journey, and I'm still on this journey, right? I still hear the voice in my head. Are you sure you want to do that, Natalie? You're going to look like an idiot. Have to manage that. All right. If you'd like the cheat sheet, I did create a cheat sheet that goes over the kind of the questions to identify the natural genius and what to do to mitigate the natural genius. I want you to drop the word genius in the comments, and I will shoot that your way. If you're struggling with the natural genius or the superhero or the soloist or the, I'm trying to remember the ones that we've covered so far, or the perfectionist, those are the ones we've covered so far, and you want to work it through, let's talk. Let's spend a few minutes on the phone. I offer a short free coaching call to every woman in the community who wants to work on this, and let's move you forward. Let's find some tools and some ways for you to move past this voice and get you to the next step, to the next level of success. So if you'd like to have free chat, not a sales conversation, it's a coaching call, I want you to drop the word chat in the comments. If you want the cheat sheet, it's genius. If you want the conversation, it's chat. Thank you so much for sticking around tonight for this Training Tuesday. I realize that this is a longer one than usual, but I am so happy that you guys joined tonight, that you stuck with it, and for all of you geniuses out there, fabulous week.